Looking at this weekend, you'll be on the call. Jimmy Mano is out. Did you have much prep done for this? Because I'm sure for someone like you who's gone to the commentary booth, loads of prep, and then somebody falls out fight week. Are you really frustrated with what happened?
I am so used to it, you have no idea. I've been in this business, on the commentary side, 10 years now-ish. And it was really funny. In Bellator, Sean Grande signed up, and he became my play-by-play commentator. I remember he called me, and he said, yeah, the bout sheet for next month. And I started laughing over the phone. And he goes, what's so funny? I go, light that on fire. That doesn't mean anything. A month ahead, he's from the NBA. We have it's huge. You have the injury report and all this stuff and the roster for, the whole year. I mean, they have their whole year schedule. And I went, Sean, throw that thing right out the window. It's meaningless. So I start prep really about 10 days out because any earlier than that, there are too many card changes. Yeah. Too many people, get dumped out a couple weeks before. So I start my prep about 10 days out. And anything that happens, man, I mean, I was on the card for Khabib Ferguson where we had 5 changes in 2 days. I mean, it was lunacy. Now, the funny part, just a little insider baseball for everybody, it really kills the play-by-play guy. Because John Anik or Fitzgerald, anyone who voices the actual pieces, the ins and outs for the videos, all those change. Now it's Eryk Anders versus Thiago Santos. All that big boy voice stuff they do, but for commercials and everything, they have to go in the studio and change all of that. John Anik in New York was in his hotel room voicing stuff. I mean, I literally had to go get him food. Like, bro, I'll go get you a sandwich because he couldn't leave his room because he's revoicing everything. It's the play-by-play guys that really get screwed. Us color guys, we just got to research another guy, but all the intros and outros and packages and throws to commercial and coming up next. Well, they have to change all that stuff. So it's really hard on them, man. They're the ones that get screwed.
So it's basically exclusive here. You will get your quick opinions on Thiago Santos versus Eryk Anders. How do you think these match up now? Have you had time to actually look at it, or I suppose just your candid thoughts on it?
I know Eryk Anders well enough. I got to start really the prep and analyzing this particular matchup. But obviously, Eryk Anders I've studied before for various fights. The good thing is, guys, now that I'm studying fights, I'm running into people I've studied before. Yeah. My first few months, the hard part was I would only study. I watched the UFC, but I studied Bellator. Well, now I study the UFC, and for the first few months, I was like the first time I was ever studying these guys. Now I've studied these fighters before for various cards that I've done for Fox or live, so it's much easier. But so Eryk Anders, I already know. Everything comes down to that last notice 6 days. Was he in camp? Was he training? Was he in shape? Was he this? Was he that? Was he getting ready for somebody who was kind of like that or not? I haven't interviewed him yet. I'll interview him in Brazil and get the answers to all his questions. He's a big guy. I don't think it's going to be a huge size difference. He's always aggressive. He always tends to come forward. He's facing a guy who's a really loopy puncher. So there are a lot of opportunities for a guy who moves straight and can maybe take advantage of those gaps. Santos likes big, wide kicks and big, wide punches. If you come in and you're quick, you can take advantage of stuff like that. Obviously, his loss against Machida, he was dealing with a slick, tricky counter guy. That is not Santos at all. So this is more kind of two bulls going at it. And so stylistically, I think Anderson's in good shape right now. And also, like I said, a big 185er. I don't think the size disparity is going to be a big deal. I think it's going to be a good fight.
How big of a, I suppose, advantage is it for Santos coming in, from Brazil? I'm not sure exactly where he's training, but now Anders has to come over and make that trip to Brazil, which isn't easy. How big of an advantage is that?
Well, it's a big advantage. The good news is I don't think the cut's a big issue because the cut sucks. Yeah. I mean, that's when guys travel, it's the cut that really kills them. You tend to retain water while you're traveling. You land and it's new food and where's this and where's that, and you're figuring everything out and cutting. Anders is coming up from 85. He's not a big cutter, generally speaking. So for this fight. So I think a big part of it is that the cut won't be as big a deal, but you're in hostile territory. Now, a quick note on this. Anywhere, not just Brazil, but anywhere you're facing hometown guys, judges are influenced by the crowd. And we just talked about Wonder Boy Darren Till. We talked about every time your opponent lands a punch, the crowd is screaming and yelling, and that affects people. And so it's almost starting out. I mean, I would say anywhere, not just Brazil, but anywhere you're going into hostile territory, you're starting out 10-9 almost. Your first round, man, you got to almost make up 2 points. It's just the way it works, and the crowd's going to react to everything Santos does. So Anders has to start fast. He has to really be conscious of the fact that never think a round is yours. So you're kind of always looking for a finish the entire time.
Yeah, one that jumps out for me as well is Smiling Sam Alvey's on the card, and it's always fun when Smiling Sam Alvey's fighting. He's taking on Nogueira, and Alvey, he's on a bit. Yeah. It's almost. It's Sam Alvey goes through little purple patches in his career, but he's got 2 big wins as well, coming off the back off. So again, fighting a legendary name in Nogueira here as well. Again, the same thing is coming in. He's fighting a legend in Brazil, so you almost got to think you got to finish the guy to get the decision realistically here.
Well, that was one of the fights, really. Thanks for taking it. That jumped out at me on the card when I saw it, because Alvey's style, the best way to put it, he's not the busiest striker in the world. He fights in a style where it's easy to take rounds away from him if you want to. And he's in territory where they might want to. So I think stylistically he has to make some changes. You saw the John Vellante fight, which was the last one of his I called in Utica, New York. There were times when, like, man, he just needs to turn it up a little bit and kind of ice rounds. The end of every round, you were kind of wondering who it went to. He can't do that against a guy who's a household name in Brazil. He has to really put his stamp on every single round. And that hasn't been his style in his last few fights. He needs to do that in Brazil. He needs to be a lot busier and either overwhelm Nogueira with volume or really rock him with strikes. 2 things he doesn't do that often.
A man you know quite well from Bellator is on the card, Hector Lombard, who's going through a pretty poor run at the moment. He has, I think it's 5 losses on the trot. Is this almost do or die for Lombard in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to see it that way. Whether it is or not, that's how he has to fight. And also, he's fighting a veteran in Thales Leites, who's fought everybody. He's not going to be intimidated, bowled over by anything. Great with his ground game, solid with his striking. You know, his kickboxing's really improved over the last few years. And Hector Lombard, to me, it's all up in the head, man. It's all mental with him. We've seen him look, you know, when he's really on a run and really looking great, looks fantastic. And I mean, even round by round in fights, you know, or Neil Magny, I mean, he just put him through the ground in the first round, and then it just went away. He just didn't pace himself well, and you know, he ends up stepping backward, and that's a big thing for him is the consistency. And you know, a professional athlete told me one time, he was an aspiring, he goes, everybody can have a Tiger Woods game or a Tiger Woods shot. He goes, the interesting part is the guys at the elite level have that over and over and over again. They're consistent. I mean, that's one thing about being a professional. Hector Lombard at the elite level hasn't been consistent. He needs to find that rhythm, or else, you know, it's up and down every time. And guys like Thales Leites, he's going to have a better round and come back to second round. He's not going to be, oh, God, it's over, I'm done. You know, he's not going to – he's a veteran. He's not going to think that way. So Hector's problem has been consistency. He needs to find it now, period.
On the card, obviously there's a lot of fighters like Henan Barret was on the card as well. But for you, if you were to sell this guy, like in some ways, you know, your enthusiasm, it just jumps off the screen when you're both calling your fights and even when you're talking about them today. But when you look at this card, and it's somebody that might be, we always tend to have like an under the radar fight that people mightn't be talking about or excited about. But when you look at this card, Jimmy, which fight for you here is jumping out for you and the reasons why?
Augusto Sakai, Chase Sherman, man. Let's go to the undercard and talk about that. They're 2 big heavyweights, really athletic, really light on their feet. That's what I love seeing personally whenever I see a heavyweight fighter. Guys who kind of move like lighter weights, and both these guys do. And they have real power. Augusto Sakai making his UFC debut. This guy called a lot in Bellator. Always liked him, has a heavyweight. And both guys are really, not only are they great finishers, I think there are 2 combined decisions for both guys, is they move well. They're fun to watch. They're really, really athletic, and the guy who lands is going to knock the other one out. And so that's kind of the prelim to me that I'm keeping an eye on. And there's so much room in the heavyweight division as well. I mean, there's so much movement. A lot of the veteran names are we saw Arlovsky fight last time. He's just, he's getting on in years, and there's a lot of room. What I look at for a fight too is not just what the fight is itself. What's the room for the winner? Where does the winner go? And in 205 and heavyweight, I think there's a lot of room for a lot of new blood. So a lot of opportunity there. That's why I'm looking at this.